content. Okay, so it's going back. So that's brilliant, Nadia. What about you, Emily? How hot are you on finances or finance?
I'm not confident at all. I'd say I'm probably like I'm nearer E than C.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just haven't had any experience of finance at all. I was okay at maths at school.
Yeah.
But it's not like a disastrous situation in terms of not understanding maths.
Yeah.
It's just finance budgets I have no knowledge of.
Okay. I'm conscious I'm not sharing stuff. So finance and budgets, that's fine, because actually you don't need a lot of experience on the, yeah, it will be fine, and it will make perfect sense. Okay. Can you see the slides again? I'm sorry to keep asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. All right, so Emily's down by an E just because of experience. Do you know what, though? The whole thing with this module is, even if you haven't got a massive amount of experience or exposure in your role, it just means if you do want to move into a different role where you need to do a bit of finance, at least you've done a module. So even if you haven't got direct experience, you can say, well, I've done a module on it, and, you know, I understand about budgets and things. You're not lying or anything, but it just gives you a bit more of an edge, that's all. Chloe, what about yourself? Do you have anything to do with finance?
Not really. I mean, I could probably ask the partnership managers, because obviously they have budgets for each of the partners.
Yeah.
But in terms of maths and stuff, it's not for me.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be. It's fine, honestly. It's just understanding the flow of money more than anything, rather than everything that's going on. Okay, yeah, it's sort of with this. It's just knowing enough that no one can lie to you. That's what you want to do, and actually understand if something's a bit fishy. That's more than anything what I'm trying to achieve with this. So as I say, we've got lots of different resources that I've given. You've got the support sheet, which is the main thing, and then for each learning outcome you've got like specific slides, so when you're going to answer it, you'll be able to download the slides, and Chloe, you'll be able to next week when you've got access to it.
Oh my god, I can access it before that. I just couldn't get onto it today because my partner's got a Mac.
Oh, okay.
Off it, so actually I can.
Okay, fantastic. Brilliant. That's really, really good news then. So the first part of the first question is understanding about finance within the organisation. So it's like the role between finance and other areas within the business. So what at the moment, right, so CU or Coventry University, what type of business is it? What type of organisation? Do you know what the status is?
I'm sure it's a charity.
Yeah.
Considered a charity, I think.
Yep. Do you know what type of... This is a word before the charity. It's fine.
It's not like non-profit, not something about non-profit or something, is it?
No. It's called an exempt charity.
Oh, there, it's on the slide.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, it's an exempt charity. So what that means is, with all this, cut anything out that's not relevant to CU. Let's make this all really, really relevant. Okay. So it's what it means is you've still got to present your information to the government. So do you know what HMRC is? Yeah.
Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs.
Yes, and that means it's traceable, the information that you... Right. If we're a charity, what we're dealing with is public funds. So we're actually getting money from students, but other sources as well. And we have to be completely transparent with how we use it. So it's really, really important that they have an audit trail of where the money goes. And actually, there are all sorts of things as well, like you have a board of governors and they'll sign off the reports and the finances. And what it gives is a public level of confidence that the organisation's behaving appropriately. So exempt charities, or charities in general, are under quite a lot of scrutiny. You'll find on the Coventry University website, they've always got the annual financial statements. So Greg, is it Langston? Greg, what's his surname?
That rings a bell.
Yeah, I think he's very public, isn't he, with sort of giving updates in terms of the organisation's finances and how it affects everyone. So it's quite a big driver, isn't it, for the organisation?
Yeah.
In fact, would you say it's the biggest at the moment?
I would say so.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, I do as well, because it's shaping every decision that's made, isn't it?
Yep. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And what are the reasons for that then? What sort of things are being, what's happening at the moment? What are the things that what's financially going on?
Well, they've predicted a shortfall, haven't they? So they're trying to save a set amount of money. I think they did a recruitment freeze. So I hear that they're reevaluating assistant professors, I think it is, in grade 9 roles.
Oh, I think that's and why would they be doing that?
To save money, so they're trying to
cost it,
yeah.
Everything is cost cutting. They're trying to. The expression is they're trying to sweat their assets, and the reason, what that really means is the whole reason that hourly paid tutors haven't been renewed is if we haven't got a massive amount of income, why are we going to pay people on an hourly basis? We're going to use our full-time tutors. And then what's happening in the economy as well? So how are people's what's going on for job security at the moment? How are people feeling about the job market?
It's really rubbish.
Yeah, absolutely rubbish. If you don't like your job, you just got to keep it, haven't you, for now? Because you aren't going to have any options. That's the feeling, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So because of that, it just means that even if people feel overworked and they're having more and more piled on them, you don't have as much bargaining power, do you?
None at all.
I know. So this is like, I know this is a bit depressing, but it sort of almost sums out how things are at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, personally, because I was seconded into my role and it ended, but the person who was meant to fall back into that role got a new job.
Okay.
So they didn't extend my secondment, and then I asked them, okay, so who's going to be taking on the grade 5? It's me. And they said, you've just got to ride out the storm. So essentially I'm just doing the work for free, and they're calling it riding out the storm. And because there's no jobs out there, I just have to do it.
Are they paying you grade 5 salary?
No.
That's awful.
Yeah, so I sent a big long email. I just don't get a response. And then I was just told to ride the storm.
That's great, isn't it? That's a great answer when you're doing 2
Yeah.
jobs price of 1.
I know you're doing that as well. Are you doing your existing job as well as the old job?
Yeah, I don't feel like I've got a choice. Like,
No, I'm not saying you have. I
feel like I can't go out there and get a new job at the moment. I've been looking. It's probably not the right time for me either to do that, but yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what to do.
This won't give you the answers, but it sort of explains why things are going on at the moment. And I think there's a massive disconnect, and I don't think people at the top level care, because I think they're so concerned about the financial position we're in. And the reason being, and this does make sort of, as we're going through this, it does make sense of it. It's a monster. The university is a monster, because what they've done is they've bought so many buildings and they've got so many costs that actually when things shrink, they can't shrink their costs.
Yeah.
A huge amount, can they? I mean, they can, and they are trying not to do the redundancies. But I'm wondering partly if that's more about PR and about protecting the reputation than it is about doing the right thing by people. I don't know. because in effect, if you're renegotiating the assistant professor's role, you know, whatever grade 9s or whatever it is, if you're doing that, you might not be making people redundant, but you're still making them do more for less, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's just really difficult. Yeah, I just think we're not, as saying, we're not in a strong negotiating position. I'm so sorry that's been pushed on you, because it's just not.
Oh, it's okay. I know it's one of them. I mean, I'm happy I've still got a job, so that's something.
Yeah, but this is it, isn't it? It shouldn't be like, yeah, yeah. And the other thing is, we don't know. Yeah, it's going to take a while to get out of this position as well, isn't it? Okay. So let's have a look here. Okay, so if we were to redo this, and we're doing it as a piece of smart art, for example, you know, where you can insert a diagram into Word, because smart art's quite good for that. How are we going to use? So, what funding does the university get?
Do they get funding?
Or what money? How do they make money? How do they get money in?
Student fees, and then research projects, like they are from different organizations, and they like from the student accommodations, they are taking their living cost as well.
Yeah, okay, so we've got different things that we've going on here. So we've got accommodations, one revenue stream, and actually that's quite profitable, isn't it, for the university?
Yeah.
So part of the reason why they want to deliver some face-to-face content is just because they want people to come back, don't they?
Yeah.
And they want people to pay. And actually, that's not about caring for anyone at all, is it?
No.
I think it's so yeah. So we've got accommodation fees.
Tuition fees.
We've got tuition fees. What other income have we got?
Research projects.
To do what? Sorry.
Research
projects, absolutely. Sorry, yes, that's right. So we've got research projects. Have we got some government funding as well, potentially? They can also, they can be for different projects, can't they?
Yeah.
So that's all income that we've got. And sometimes, but I don't think the government's doing this, they give loans, don't they, to, with the coronavirus, they've given a lot of loans to other organisations. Like, they've given a lot of loans to businesses, haven't they, to bail them out. But I think John Latham was hoping they'd start to give loans out to universities, and they've not been doing that, have they? Like crisis. Oh, have they? Do you think they have? No, they haven't. No. Okay.
But they got quite a lot of money from the furlough scheme. Even the people were required at work, but they forced them to furlough because they want to claim money from government.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, they've got money from that, which is another way of, and that's why they've probably put more people on furlough than possibly should have been at some point, because they're trying to get as much money from that as possible. Okay. So we've got our money coming in. And then how are we spending our money? So what have they been, what does the university spend it on?
Buildings.
Oh my God, don't they just? And do you know why they do that? Because it's so easy. They actually borrow money as well. And the government pension schemes love investing in university buildings. And the reason being, whatever happens, the university will make sure that they don't lose their money. Not the university, the government. Because it's too bad, like it just would be catastrophic if a university went under. So the government does, it's not overtly helping any universities, but it sort of almost protects them. So pension pots are really happy to invest in them, because they know if they don't make, like, the government will keep bailing them out. So actually they're always going to be all right. They're always going to get their returns. How many buildings has the university got?
God.
A
lot.
It's 130 something. It's
definitely.
Yeah, it's a huge amount. And because the students' sort of satisfaction is a little bit built, isn't it, on what buildings you're in? So they feel, this is what I was saying about feeding a monster, they almost they've got this critical mass and they've got to keep fueling it, because if we don't keep fueling it, we're not going to have a competitive edge. However, now we've shrunk. So actually, in terms of our income, we've got less income, but we've still got all these buildings. And really, we're only allowed to use them in quite a different way as well, aren't we? With the we haven't got the flexibility because of the social distancing. So what we're having to do as well, we're having less capacity, but we've got to open them for longer, haven't we? So we're asking staff to work more flexible hours, but we don't want to pay them anymore because we haven't got the money to pay them anymore. So it's sort of all, as I say, this doesn't almost make anything feel better because it just sort of explains it. You're like, blimey, we are in a bit of a situation. Another thing that the government, that they're paying a lot out for at the moment, is pensions, isn't it? And we keep hearing about this at roadshows and stuff, don't we? And they're really trying to renegotiate on that because they're really worried about that. Okay.
That was the biggest worry, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's also the biggest reason why people have job satisfaction, isn't it? With a good teaching pension or whatever. It's sort of, it's almost like the police have had it, haven't they, as well, where they've had to redo it in time. But yeah, it's hugely costly. And aren't they doing this thing so they're trying to get old people like not to retire? Have they got some? What's that called?
Do they ask them to come back after they've retired?
Retire and return, yeah.
Retire and return.
Retire and return,
yeah.
That's it, yeah.
What's that all about? Is that so they don't have to pay? I don't understand.
I don't understand that.
No, it is because somebody was inquiring about it, so then I digged it down. It's like if you take the retirement, then you have opportunity. You can come back for 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
And so then, like you're getting your pension, and then like 2-3 days, whichever you are working, you're getting paid for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
There must be some type of catch, surely.
Well, they must be doing it so they don't have to recruit new people, or they're doing some. There's got to be some financial benefit, or they wouldn't be doing it, would they?
Yeah, like they want, in fact, like 5 days work. You can do it in 2 or 3 days, and then obviously you are getting the pay for those days. In fact.
Okay. It's really weird. Yeah, it does sound strange. Maybe yeah. So it seems strange to have that when they're putting so much. I don't know. It's all a bit weird. So we're generating our sales. So our sales are students, hopefully, ultimately, because if students come, then they need not just tuition, they potentially need someone to stay, etc. So we're getting our money in. So we start off by having some money, and then we're like getting all the infrastructure in place. Then we're selling, and then we're trying to make sure that we're getting to break-even point. And this is where they're re-examining all their costs, aren't they, to try and cut costs, to try and give Chloe 2 jobs instead of 1 because she's so good. And I just feel for you, because just think the amount of pressure that's going on at the moment. And then students actually aren't that satisfied with the online learning experience, and I totally get it. But then that feeds into the scores, doesn't it? And then that means that there'll be less students because the scores are bad. Does that make sense? So it all gets worse. It's like a sort of a negative circle. So how else are they reducing? So they're revamping different grades. They're not. Is there a recruitment freeze on as well?
Yeah.
So recruitment fees. We're trying to get the retired people back in for some reason. We know there's going to be some reason. What else are they doing to cut costs?
I mean, I suppose it isn't intentional because it's the way it's the way it has to be at the moment. But obviously, there was a lot of travel within the APU.
Yes.
Lots of different things.
Yeah.
So they would have saved thousands on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got travel, reduction in travel costs, and then reviewing how the pensions work as well, because that's hugely costly, isn't it? And then any variable costs. So in other words, anything we don't have to have that's not a full-time person, they're just cutting contracts, weren't they? So anyone who got a contract, they weren't renewing it. So we're just trying to almost, without shaking stuff too much, make as many savings. And then they have talked about the level of savings they're trying to make as well, haven't they? They've been very clear about that.
They stopped the cost of living pay rise, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well,
and even little things like, and these are things that make a big difference to people, like at meetings, not having any allowance for teas and coffees, or not, like I'm sure at the road shows when they were in person at one point, even Christmas parties, they'd have like bacon rolls, or they'd have, do you know what I mean? Like things that aren't very expensive and really, really were nice things to do, but that over time they've just disappeared, haven't they? Yeah. I suppose it's that sort of almost little bits of savings add up, but I think they actually have a huge cost, don't you, as well, in terms of morale? It's really difficult, I think. So yeah, at the moment we're getting some sales in, but probably we're still really having to look at our break even and how much we're making. And then, right, so if it's a non-for-profit organisation, as we said, so it's an exempt charity, so we're not allowed to make a profit, what's the word that's used instead of profit for a charity?
Surplus?
Yeah, well done. It's called a surplus. So it's still like an organisation, but the reason why they're actually okay at the moment is because they have been making a surplus, haven't they, for a while? And that's...
Can I just make a phone call? I've just had a phone call, which I definitely need to attend. So yeah. Sorry.
No. Just come back when you're ready, okay? Thank you for letting us know, though. I won't pick on you then, I'm sorry. Corporation tax. So corporation tax, if we're a business. So we're not a business, but do you think the university pays any tax? Nadia or Chloe, do you reckon?
I would have thought so.
Yeah, they do. And it can be on sort of profit to do with buildings, or when you look at their annual report, there is some tax, but it's not necessarily the corporation tax. So my little business, my consulting business, is a limited company. On any profits I make, I pay 20% tax, because that's corporation tax. So the university wouldn't pay that, but it will pay something because it's an exempt charity. So, and then if we were talking about my business, I'd get the money after that. So I pay my tax, anything that's then, it's called a dividend. So that's why in lockdown, it's been quite horrendous for people who have their own limited companies, because what they do is they pay themselves £8,000 a year or next to nothing, because they take their money out as dividends, because that's more profit, because that's less tax, like they pay less tax. So it means if they're almost furloughing themselves, their equivalent salary is only £8,000 a year. So it's worked out quite badly for them. Does that make sense? Because it's not a true indication of what they're taking out of the business. But don't worry about that. This is just like additional information, so please don't be fuzzled by it, because it doesn't. And then the idea is, so basically, we do our sales, we try and make sure that we're making a good profit on it, and then we have some money left over, 5D, and we reinvest it, so it's our surplus, so we put it in towards new research and development. If we're we don't want to have too much of a surplus if we're a charity, so we just look at where to invest it in terms of keeping the organisation going. So I think you could use that. I think you could adapt it in this question, and I think it'd be quite straightforward, just exactly the way we've discussed. And then here, again, you could go and use this, and you can take my slide and adapt it. So our CEO is John Latham, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's informed by other people, so Greg Langston. Who else will help him set his strategy?
What's his name? Is his name like Guy something?
Oh, Guy Daly, Mr. Student Experience. They'll look the same as well, don't they? All the people who run the organisation. They're all like...
If one of them walked past me, I probably
wouldn't know who they are. No. You would, because they'd have this like self-important vibe, and you'd be like, yeah.
True.
They do. But and then we've got Ian Dunn as well, haven't we? No.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Ian as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got sort of the key people. John Dishman runs the CU group, and actually it's all about cost cutting pressures at the moment, clear direction. We need to maximise what we can earn. Another key thing they did, which I think is quite interesting in terms of income generation, they told all the undergrad students, they said, look, this year you're not going to end up getting a job, so you might as well stay on and be a postgrad, didn't they? I think that was really clever, don't you? Because they're like, you know, it's if you're going to do a master's, now's the time because the market's so poor. So that was quite a good way of trying to get more income. Also, out of all these areas, where do you think there's any growth out of undergraduate degrees, professional courses, research, or apprenticeships?
So T&E, there's been a big growth.
What's that? Sorry.
So T&E, so transnational education. So
okay.
have abroad. So they're focusing on growing those partnerships unless they bring in more partnerships.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a British brand, isn't it? Which sort of has a bit of weight as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Apprenticeships, there's a lot of money put into those, and the government, and if employers don't use the money, they actually lose it, if that makes sense. So they yeah, it's sort of a real incentive. So apprenticeships growth, we've got the international is growth, and then in terms of expenditure, they're just trying to reduce it as much as they possibly can, aren't they? So again, I think you could use something similar here and just talk about it, couldn't you? Do you think you'd be comfortable in doing that? So I think this 1.1, use my slides, adapt them, and just talk about them. And I don't think it's that's tricky, really. So we've got, that's 1.1 done. So you basically talk about it being an exempt charity. We just redo the circle, and then we can potentially do that as well. So where our money comes in, where it's going out, and what John Latham's vision is. And you could quote from his the roadshow that he's doing today. You could watch the video and just use a quote from that or a slide or something. So the next bit, examine the impact of financial objectives on decision making. So how is what their financial priorities are, how does that impact the organisation? So the first example here, reducing costs. That is, I think that's the key, isn't it? In terms of financial objectives, that's what they're doing. It's all about cost reduction, isn't it? And what are the implications of it?
I mean, like you were saying, Hannah, so just taking out the tea and coffee from meetings, I think that has an effect on the morale of the staff sometimes, even though it's only something, it's just like a little perk, isn't it?
Yeah. But goodwill's two ways, isn't it? And actually, if you just take and you don't give anything back, at the moment, so they're reducing costs by not replacing the person who you're carrying on doing. And what was the wording you used? You got to ride with it.
Ride the storm.
Ride the storm. Okay.
Quote. Ride the storm.
Okay. So after riding the storm, when the market changes, if you had a better opportunity, would you go?
I've already started applying for jobs.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So what I'm getting at is, if we're not careful, goodwill goes two ways, and actually little bits, if you feel like someone's taking the mickey, you're not going to stay. So you can't do. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what stung the most, because some days I would be in the office till 8 o'clock.
Oh.
You know, it's not as if we got paid for it.
Yeah.
Then it's just, it's like you were saying that you know, upper management, they really don't care. They have no idea, because they don't go down into the ranks and ask questions, and I don't even think that they know what we do. I think they're just so out of it. They really don't have an idea.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely. Yeah. yeah, I think it's they're so disconnected with the strategies they're putting in place.
Yeah.
And also things like, I don't know if it's been a cost reduction, but whatever's happened in registry recently, it's been an absolute balls. You know, the students joining courses at the moment, I've got ones that are 6 weeks in, and in other words, they're submitting this week and they're not enrolled yet. And that's just, and we've got ones who've come in and they're on visas and they're not enrolled as well. So we've got, yeah, it's just, if we're not careful, we'll cut costs to the point where we're not delivering on the student experience. So I suppose what I want to say here is just financial implications, financial objectives have massive implications, don't they? And we're trying to maximise profit. So this is where we're looking at doing whatever we can to earn more. But actually, they did include things like books, didn't they, within the fees? So they almost did the opposite, where they've tried to add some value. But this is where you're upselling. Does that make sense? So you're trying to think about, like, if they did what's the extra things they can do? The advantage modules. Like full-time learners, I think they can do extra modules.
Yeah, and I think they can do, you know, the Lingua Monday thing and stuff.
But all that, if they were doing it to charge more, that'd be one thing, that'd be profit maximisation. But I think they're actually doing it for the student experience, in which case it's not profit maximisation, it actually costs them to do it, but it's about creating the right reputation. So they're in a strange one, really, because they're a strange predicament, because they want to reduce their costs, but they also need to be rated well. And then cash flow. So this would be things like, so I don't know what proportion of fees come from student finance, but I think it's quite a lot. And they won't allow people to start until they get the money in. Does that make sense? Otherwise, they've not got the cash flow to run the business. So here, what we're trying to do is make sure we're getting the money in to run the business. And then other companies, so this is something the university could do, is actually sell some of their buildings. So rather than keep on buying them, like, see if they can sell anything. But what's the problem with that now?
No one's got any money to buy anything.
I know. So you're not in a very good market, are you?
Yeah, property is really down at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've not got the options there. And then growth. And I suppose this is where the university has tried to do this, haven't they? Whenever they've earned money, they've tried to put more money into it. Does that make sense? So they've tried to, however, what we've got to do is make sure we've got a little bit in the bank. So actually, if we've got a time like now, we're okay. So it's not all been reinvested. There's a little bit put to one side. So I think you've got loads to talk about there. So very simply, you're just looking about financial objectives. Just talk about your experience, talk about what John Latham's talked about, and talk about these options, but talk about their implications for the university. Are you comfortable with doing that?
We can try.
You can try. Chloe, how do you feel about it?
Can try, yeah.
It's not maths, is it yet?
No.
That's what I want you to feel. Yeah, exactly. This is easier than maths. This is just understanding the big picture, really. Right. Then the next bit is, what's the difference between management accounting and financial accounting? This is really straightforward. So financial accounting is things like, it's the numbers that we see. So it's like balance sheets, profit and loss statements. It's what we're reporting and the shareholders look at, or the board of governors look at. Management accounting is what managers use. So it's their budgets, it's looking at what money's coming in, but it's more operational. So it's looking at, like, if we buy this building, how many years will it take before we get our money back? So management accounting shapes decisions on an operational level. Financial accounting looks at what information is shared publicly to see how the organisation's doing. Okay, so they're just on different levels. So all you've got to do is just give a really, really brief description on that. And all I'm doing is I'm giving you the edited slides. So there are, when you come to do it, just reword it. There are slides in there already. There's wording in the body of the assignment. Just reword, it'll be fine. And if it's too similar, I'll let you know. So as I say, management accounting, we're looking at how we're performing, what level of risk we're taking, and we're taking the business forward, the strategy. So we're just making sure that everything we're doing has got a justification. So it's either going to save us money or it's going to make us money. But I think at the moment, all they're interested in is saving money, not necessarily making money, because they haven't got the money coming in to afford it. Financial accounting, we've got three things. A balance sheet looks at what's come in, what's gone out, and it's got to equal. So, and the reason that might sound a bit odd, but it might equal because we're borrowing money. So it might be equaled by debt, or it's equals because we've got a profit, but then we reinvest the profit. So it just makes sure we're looking at what goes in and what comes out, and they're on two sides. A profit and loss, it's only like a page, but it talks about sales, costs, and at the end of it, we've got a profit or a loss figure. And then the cash flow, you don't have to have one of those for the government, but the cash flow, month by month, it looks at what money's coming in, what money's coming out, and it helps us plan for if we're going to have a gap. So that what's one of the really smart things that the university does to keep money coming in all year round?
Has several intakes.
Yes. Yeah. So it's called it's like almost like a carousel model, isn't it, where people can come in all the time, and that is a point of difference with other universities as well, isn't it? Well, it has been. I think other universities are starting to catch up with it now, but that's really good for cash flow because it keeps the money coming in all year round. New intake every is it about 6 a year or something? It's quite high, isn't it? It's at least 3 anyway. Okay, so that's 1.3. Again, this is just descriptive. So yeah, please, Chloe, it's really quite straightforward. But if you don't feel it is, we can do one-to-one. So don't feel like I'm saying that, and then you can't ask for any help because I'll talk you through it on a one-to-one if you don't get it. Then we've got to look at what frameworks we've got. So by this, we need to look at what governs the university, who's reporting, if there's any whistleblowing, and systems for buying things in. So what sort of governance is in place at the university, do you think?
I think they do have a whistleblowing one because
definitely, yeah,
something on the portal and it just whistleblowing. So
yeah,
I think they definitely have that one.
Why do you think it's so important for them to do that? What do you think the university's reputation, or do you think?
It's because if they didn't have a whistleblowing policy and someone did do whistleblowing, there would be no regulation or control or kind of guideline for it.
Yeah, and I think this comes back again to this whole exempt status as well, this charity status, that actually, as a university, we've got to be above clean, haven't we? We've got to do things in such a publicly traceable way because it can't afford to have a scandal. You know, it would, and especially, I mean, internationally as well, you don't want the university to be looked down on. It needs to have a high level of credibility. And actually, the thing with whistleblowing is it's meant to protect the people involved, isn't it? So if something does happen, that everybody, if you're really junior in the organisation, you're not then sacked. So there needs to be those processes in place, and that will tie in with financial misconduct. So in terms of governance, who signs off on sort of like, how do we know that John Latham doesn't just decide to buy this or buy that?
Is it the Board of Governors?
Yeah.
He would have to propose whatever to.
Yeah, absolutely. And are they employed, or how do the Board of Governors work?
I don't think they're employed in the normal. I think it's slightly different, but I'm not sure how.
Yeah, I think they're independent.
Yeah.
I think they're appointed independently, and I think they've got quite a high level of credibility. And because of that, their personal reputation matters, doesn't it? So I think you're absolutely right. That's that additional level of scrutiny by having those people, and also because they're actually signing off on things and they're known and publicly known. Yeah, that they're putting their individual name against things. So yeah, so it's in their interest to really understand procurement. So what are the procurement policies? Oh, how much? What are the different levels of buying things and what happens at different levels?
I think there's like set amounts that each grade can spend up to, and if they want to go above that budget, it has to be approved by different senior levels of staff.
Okay, and why would they do that?
Is it because they manage the overall budget, so they know what they can afford?
Yeah.
Have a way to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's this combination, it's sort of a balance between getting the right level of scrutiny, because it's time consuming to get it signed off. But actually, unless we do that, then people can just spend what they want. So we have to work out at what level is it appropriate to have different people involved. And actually, sometimes when you're in a cost-cutting environment, you have to reduce that a little bit. So the levels come down a little bit to make sure that people aren't spending above a certain amount. In terms of regulatory frameworks, do any of these come into play with what you're doing? Your roles, are any of these, are you familiar with any of them? Or have you heard?
I mean, possibly within my department, T&E, and there's probably at least one of those in the contracts, but I couldn't be specific right now.
Yeah, and also because you're operating over different countries, it makes it a little bit more difficult, doesn't it? There's going to be something protecting consumers, absolutely, and the university does have things in place so that if people change their minds, that they've got a level of protection. There's also going to be the GDPR, and that's about how data is used and shared and the level of accountability that they've got to disclose information and talk about how it's used. They won't just do the minimum wage, they'll do the national living wage as well, won't they? So what implications did that or have on employers? I think for the university, they're quite good payers. You know, not brilliantly, but I think there aren't that many people that are at the national minimum wage. So I think they always paid a bit extra anyway. But if we were in a really low cost industry like care homes, it suddenly put their prices up, didn't it? Because their costs went up massively with the national living wage in particular. So all these are just pick one or two and talk about how that impacts the pricing or how that impacts the costs. Okay. So I talk about the board of governors, I talk about whistleblowing, and then maybe do something about the Consumer Act, and just anything like that is going to have a cost on the organisation because we've got to do things properly. GDPR has a cost on the organisation. They suddenly had to redesign things, didn't they? So things couldn't be left on printers. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of, they were protecting. So it meant the national minimum wage. It just meant, actually, if there were some low cost jobs, do you know what they ended up doing? Outsourcing it. Outsourced to Sodexo, then they pay the minimum wages and we're not in trouble for it. Does that make sense? No? Go on.
So I'm guessing if they didn't outsource the catering, they'd have to hire staff themselves and they'd have to pay more.
Yeah, and we'd also have to look at contributing in terms of pensions, because we'd got that whole work-based pension, haven't we? So we needed to do that because that's about trying to force people. So basically, the more we can, and then the university got in quite a lot of trouble, didn't they? Or universities did, because they do a lot of disguised employees. You know, like they were a big problem. So there was a bit like with the Uber drivers, I think it was. Is it a job or are they self-employed? Because actually it can work out very low paid if you're not careful. But you're right, if you employ people, you have to pay quite a lot of extra costs, don't you? Holiday costs, statutory sick pay, etc., etc. So all I want you to do is not spend a lot, because the word count is probably about 350 words for each bit. And in that document, I have broken it down, but just pick a couple and just look at your area. And honestly, you'll find things on it that you'll just be like, oh yeah, that's how that works. And all this is about is it increasing the cost for the university? Absolutely. Everything to do with regulation increases costs. So next thing we have to look at is how can an organisation get additional money in? Do you think the university has overdrafts?
Yeah.
I think yeah, probably. Mortgages?
Yeah.
Yeah, on all their buildings. Can they issue shares?
I don't think they could if they were a charity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They can't. Some parts of the group, I think, might be limited companies, but actually they can't. You're absolutely right. There are, as a charity, we do not give shares. We don't have shareholders because that provides a conflict of interest. So we would look at the bank for overdrafts. We would look at borrowing money from pension companies. And we can look at external funding through raising money through grants. Internal funds. So this is like, if we haven't spent our surplus, we could then use it to fund the business. If we've got, so CU Group is seen as quite a profitable part of the business, isn't it? And that funds other courses that might not be doing so well. So that's quite a good way of doing it. And then working capital, this is really dangerous, right? So this is when you use money. So you might use the money from fees that you've got set up to pay for some suppliers, but you use it short term to make sure you're okay. So you sort of borrow money from yourself. It's almost like if you hadn't got enough money to pay your rent and you've got a pot of money to pay something else, you'd use that money. So it can create problems. So, but the thing here is we've got either money internally that we haven't used, or we borrow it from externally. So again, I think that's fairly straightforward. We just can't do shares on that. And then in here, you've got all sorts of options, but let's face facts. With these, pretty much the banks you're going to be able to borrow from, other part of the business, like the CU group, you're not going to get money from angel funding. You're not going to get it from crowdfunding. You might borrow it from asset-based finance, but that's unlikely. You're not going to get venture capital. So there's very few here, just to focus on what the university can do. There's very, very little. Mortgages and banks and the government through research. So in terms of this, Emily, I'm not quite sure how much of it you missed, but it's not numbers. So please don't be worried about that. It's just about, in principle, how the money works in the organisation.
Yeah.
So for part A, 1.1 is that circle flow of money in the organisation, and that what our income is and what our expenditure is, and just that the university is an exempt charity and what that means. Financial objectives we know is going to be about cost cutting, and actually they do need to spend money on the customer student experience. Management accounting is what we need to know, 1.3, to run the business. Financial accounting is what we need to show everyone else, so they're the financial statements. Managing finance, 1.4, that's things like the governance in place, whistleblowing, board of directors, or the board, regulatory frameworks is going to be things like the consumer distance selling regulations, GDPR, things that cost us money, but we need to do them right. And then the challenges in terms of accessing finance are going to be like, where can we actually access it from? At the moment, it's going to be harder for them to access finance anyway. Even things like mortgages are harder to get at the moment because there's less money available and they're more concerned about returns. The next session we're going to look at how to create a budget and how to forecast ahead. And we're going to just look at the process of setting a budget. So if you can find out for the next session, if there are any budgets, even a really simple one for an event, for a bit of development work, for anything that you can see, for a bit of marketing, try and get access to that, because you could then use it for the second part of the assignment for learning outcome 2. So we've covered everything we really need to cover for task 1. How do you feel like now you've been through it? I know it's a case of you need to do it to have a go, but at least it's not like, I just felt at one point every module I taught you was just the same contents but with different sections. I think at least this one's a bit different. But is that okay? Like, are you comfortable at least starting this?
Yeah, I'd definitely give it a go.
You'd give it a go. That's as good as
like you said, it's not as bad as I thought.
No, I thought that. I thought when you see it, you're going to think it's okay, actually. What about you, Emily? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think it's probably not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So that's a good thing. Yeah, and I've understood like the main points so far, so that's good.
Okay.
Despite having 15 minutes on the phone to my estate agent telling me that we're not going to be able to move into the new house on Saturday.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
Because there's been a problem. Never mind. So I'm really sorry about that. But I think
no. Yeah, and it's recorded, so I'll add the recording to Moodle. Or what I'll do is I'll do it on YouTube and add a link. So if you did miss what you missed. Brilliant. Okay. And Nadia, are you, because you're a mascaro and you haven't had any maths? I'm so sorry. This is your topic and I haven't delivered. Are you okay with it, Nadia?
Yeah, I think this is more kind of background.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so it's yeah, I think I understood all of the point. I will try it, but
yes.
it looked like a little bit tricky. Next will be the set and manage the budget. That will be more interesting, I was.
Yeah, possibly. And but the budget can be something really, really simple. So if you can get access, as I say, to a budget, that would be amazing, because that will make a big difference. Yeah. So our next session is 9:30 to 11. So it's short again, 1.5 hours, and it's on Wednesday, the 11th of November. Okay. And then if there is anything extra that you want, if you want to talk about it through your own, just let me know and we'll book a one-to-one together, okay? So I think I've already added you on Teams and invited you. Yes, it should be a Teams invite for that next session. And if there is, yeah, I will sort it out if there isn't anyway. But it might be worth listening to John Latham's Roadshow, because I think you're going to be able to relate so much of this to it. Because everything is about money at the moment, isn't it? Finance. Okay. If any of you, given that you're all so swamped anyway, I doubt you will, but if you want me to look at anything as you're writing it, please let me know and I'll give you feedback. Chloe, I'll feedback to Joe and say, we're just, doing one step at a time. You're definitely still on it. And I will start looking about the 3-way reviews in your portfolios as well. Okay. Is that all right for today?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and I hope next time not to cry at the beginning of the session. Yeah, I do hope.
That's okay, Hannah. If you need to cry, you cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's places to do, I suppose. So I know you are my safe space. Yeah, thank you. It's really nice to see you all. Emily, when are you moving then?
Probably not for another month.